don't think anybody's life turns out exactly as they imagined. I think that we all are thrown some curveballs, and it kind of depends on how we catch them. Uh, but I think when you become a parent, that completely changes your course, whether it's for the better and it turns out much more awesome than you ever imagined, or more challenging, or just different. I think it changes the course of your life, and it certainly did for me. I once somebody compared me to the game at the carnival where you throw the really hard wooden balls at the clowns and they fall back and then they pop back up with a big smile on their face. And that's a very accurate analogy of my life. I've been tossed a lot of extremely hard wooden curveballs in my life, and I generally have had the ability to pop back up with a smile. I think a lot of sarcasm has helped, a sense of humor. Uh, I was given quite the curveball when I was presented with parenting two special needs children, and this is my journey. I'm Nikki Lynn Chase. This is my podcast about navigating life's unexpected with two special needs children as a single parent. I love being a mom. It doesn't define me, but it is my purpose. And it has been nothing like I imagined or nothing like I expected it to be, but it's been a lot more, both on both ends, a lot more awesome and great and fascinating and interesting. And it's also been extremely challenging and difficult. And it's been a roller coaster. Life always hands out surprises, I think. And I think the first memory I have of life presenting a surprise is a funny story. It's been told quite a few times since I was young. I was about between ages 10 and 11. And we were in Las Vegas for a tournament, a tennis tournament. We were staying at the Sands Hotel, which is no longer there. It had a big tennis facility. It was a big tournament, and I I loved the social aspect of it, and I had a doubles partner, and we were actually really good. Granted, we were really young, but we were great. We were having the time of our lives, and the tennis tournament was wrapping up, and we got hotel room duty where our moms both said, go make sure you haven't left anything in the hotel. And so uh, I got the duty of checking under the beds. You know, protocol for when you leave a hotel: check the drawers, check the bathroom, check the whole room, make sure you haven't left anything. So I'm looking under the bed with my doubles partner. Her name is Katie, and I find a black paper bag, and I pull it out from under the bed, and it's got this long flesh colored item in it, and it's got straps at the end, and I'm thinking, oh my god, Katie, come over here, look at this. I have just found a baby's fake leg. I didn't know the word prosthetic at the time, but that's what I meant. Like, I had just found somebody had left behind a child's fake leg at the hotel. And Katie was always a little brighter than I was, a step ahead. And she said, that is not a fake leg. That is a mask. That's like a Pinocchio mask. And I thought, okay, you know what? You're right. That makes a little more sense. So I strapped the item onto my face, and we thought it was hysterical. And then we walked around the hotel, and we walked into our moms were in an adjoining room. I think there were, between the two of us, a couple brothers there. And I walked into the room and said, hey guys, it's Pinocchio, the small wooden boy. And I remember our mom's faces, and my mom said, go wash your face like you've never washed your face before. And everybody was in hysterics and just dying laughing. And I just thought to myself, oh my God. Then I, of course, learned what it was. And I'm not trying to one up Forrest Gump, but I think in a sense it was sort of a defining moment in that, oh, life is kind of like a bag of strap-ons. Like you just wore black paper bag in Vegas. You don't know what you're going to get. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's true. I continued throughout my life to just constantly get black paper bags and have no idea what the heck I was going to find inside of them. So fast forward to a time in my life where it was time. I was 29, I guess, and it was time to think about having kids. And that's all I had really ever wanted. I just wanted to be a mom. You know, I played with dolls until it was actually a completely inappropriate age too. I was obsessed. I loved babysitting. I was always around kids. I loved kids. Probably wouldn't say the same thing now, but I loved them. I thought they were the greatest things ever. And maybe it was because I could relate to them. I was pretty immature. But I grew up, was born in the 70s, and I grew up at a time where there wasn't social media, of course, and there wasn't Google, there wasn't anything. When you were planning for a baby, you got the book, What to Expect When You Were Expecting, and you know that age group of my friends, we were all reading it. Everybody was getting married and having these weddings and getting that book. And oh, the anticipation of being a mom. Like, this is so great. Like, my life is going to be amazing. Like, I married this guy, and I'm speaking for everybody. I married a guy, and now it's time you have a child, and then you live in this beautiful home. Well, I was also obsessed with catalogs. In particular, I love the Pottery Barn catalog. And of course, because it was designed to sell furniture and household items, it was pristine, it was beautiful, it was clean. And I wanted my life to be the Pottery Barn life. I wanted my kids' room to look like the nurseries in the Pottery Barn catalog. I wanted it to be the Pottery Barn life. And so I had my book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. I planned to get pregnant, and I did, and I had a very easy pregnancy. It was smooth sailing, no problems. I enjoyed it actually. I really, really enjoyed my pregnancy, my first pregnancy. And then I was blessed with an incredibly amazing, perfect, beautiful baby girl, and her name is Bootsy. And Bootsy, when she was born, had the sweetest, cutest, tiniest cry. And in fact, she became like the it girl at the hospital when she was born, and all the nurses would come in and they'd bring the other nurses by, and they're like, that's the baby, that's the one with the really quiet cry. And I'm in my glory thinking, yep, look at this. I mean, right out of the gate, we've got this perfect baby. And oh, I mean, she's already a showstopper at the hospital. Bring her home. And I was very diligent. And I think a lot of moms, especially with the first child, are with writing in a calendar everything, the milestones. So I was just anxiously awaiting, and all of these things. And she was a great baby. And I was writing little novels every single day. I love writing, and that's what I was putting down. But every day it was kind of the same thing, and it didn't change a lot. It was pretty stagnant. Again, I spent a lot of time with children, babysat my entire life. I even taught school right after college. I taught 9 and 10-year-old special ed, severely handicapped children. But I was in my element. I wasn't even thinking about that part of my life, but I was kind of wondering what was going on because we weren't hitting milestones. She slept through the night at a very early age, which was great. And she was really quiet. She was very content, and she just had this beautiful personality where she was just always happy and smiling. And then we hit the point where on those calendars, it kind of gives you, well, I think it gives you the option to have stickers, and you can put the stickers. And I wasn't using any of the stickers. Like first this, I had used the first smile sticker, but the rolling over and the crawling. And it got to the point where we weren't hitting any of those milestones. And I grew concerned, of course. And we had a pediatrician, and I was taking her, and he just kept telling me she's on her own curve, not to worry. And I was worried. I didn't listen to my gut. He didn't listen to me when I brought up my concerns. He just kept telling me everything was okay, and I wanted to believe him. And he was the doctor, and so I did, because that's what I chose to do. But inside, I knew something was off, very off. So when she was a baby, I was babysitting. That was something I could do and take her with me. And one of the moms that I babysat for was also an audiologist. And she was also a mom, obviously. And so she knew something was off too. And really sweetly, and didn't want to concern me, and was very careful, treaded the ground lightly, said, Nikki, why don't we just take her? We'll test her. We'll kind of just do it on our own. We'll see how her hearing is, because there weren't really normal sounds coming out of Bootsy. So, in fact, we took her to her office and tested her with the protocol testing at the time was a box, the sound box, and the things. But she wasn't even at the stage where she should have been, where she could kind of like point, or it was interesting back then. Again, this was in 2003. She was born, so in the early 2000s, and technology has come so far, of course. So it was a tough find to note where she was testing. But what we did find that day was that she was completely flat and hearing impaired. And I unintentionally ended up relocating to Vail, Colorado from Denver, and got a new pediatrician who was incredible. And she was very proactive. And she told me a lot of things I didn't want to hear about how delayed Bootsy was in everything. And I hated it. And she got us an ENT. She referred us to an ENT for the first time. And that ENT had nothing but bad news to bear. And he had tested her, and she tested, of course, hearing impaired, and said she's had chronic, consistent ear infections, and her scar tissue is so built up that she doesn't hear. So we implemented the first thing to address were just tubes. Well, I had tubes even when I was a baby, and Bootsy had just needed tubes, and I thought, oh, cool, like this is nothing. Okay, the bad news, I can swallow that. We all have tubes. So then her doctor, or her pediatrician, referred us to go back down to Denver to the Children's Hospital. That's where it was located, and get her assessed. I knew what assessment meant. That meant they thought we had something wrong with us. That meant they thought we were. I'm mortified to say this, but we weren't politically correct then, or at least not as much as we are now. And the word mentally retarded was the word that was used. In fact, I want to say, I don't think that was changed to intellectually disabled till about maybe 6 years ago. So I knew what that meant. I read that on the referral paperwork. She needed to be assessed. The word mentally retarded was on there. It was a tough pill to swallow, but I still was like, they don't know. They don't know. So I took her down to Denver and she had her first assessment. And I remember it was like I was an outsider staring in on a kid, and I watched her and she was so happy and she was so content. She wasn't talking, and she's about 2 years old at this time, and she's not talking. She hasn't said her first word, even though I wrote it in the calendar because I would allow myself to believe she was saying her first words like mama. And I watched her, and her fine and gross motor skills were so delayed and off. And I felt really shitty because the one thought that crossed my mind was I came from a really athletic family, and I thought, what about sports? Like, this girl, is she going to be able to do sports? And I asked the lady, or the doctor who was assessing her, I said, what does this look like? Like, how, in your experience, I want her to be active. Like, I want her to be able to do things, run, jump, play, do sports. And the doctor said, you know, if you look at Olympic athletes, they all have the great stories. They have the inspiring stories. They have the challenges in life where they overcame things and did things, and that's what propelled them to the Olympics. And I was so appreciative of that analogy, not because I thought, oh, Bootsy needs to be in the Olympics and she needs to be an Olympic athlete, but it was absolutely true. And I thought, okay, you're right. Like, I can get through this moment in time knowing that you just gave me the encouragement that that's what makes people, whether it's in sports or not, but the great people of the world, and yes, the ones that inspire, they weren't just handed things. They worked hard, most of them, some of them, and a lot of the ones I knew. So we left, and the next step was they were going to start genetic testing. I think the first test on the list was the fish test. Well, we hadn't made it to that point yet. I think at this point we're getting into, she's about 3 years old. And I decided I wanted to have another child. And I wanted them not to be too far apart. So I ended up getting pregnant. I was pregnant with her baby brother. And a different pregnancy. It was great. It was easy, just different. I was seeing the medical staff in Vail, Colorado, and they were very different from who I'd seen with Bootsy. It was seemingly more relaxed and just kind of things were delayed. I think the original testing of birth defects was even, it doesn't seem like much, but like a couple weeks delayed or behind when you typically have it done. So I had that done. When I got the results, the nurse called, and it was somebody I actually knew personally as well. And she called and said, hey, it's nothing to be concerned about, but the baby has come back with a high risk for birth defects. And remember, at this point, I don't know anything other than Bootsy is behind. I don't, and she's being assessed. And I'm in denial that anything is going to be long-term wrong. I'm just still sticking with she's on her own curve. So I get this message and I freeze and I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to have what we now call special needs. I don't want a special needs child. I don't want a child with disabilities. That's not what I had pictured. That's not what I had planned. That's not what I wanted. And it was a yucky feeling. And then I decided I was going to have an amnio. The diagnosis they kept referring to was Down syndrome. And so I didn't want that. I did not want a child with Down syndrome or any disabilities. That's not, I wasn't prepared for that. Nobody is. So I go and have my amnio, and I think they got a hold of me within 24 hours. If not 24 hours, it was 48 hours. And it was a long day or two. But the results came back, and he did not have Down syndrome. And I was relieved, and that was great. So I carried on and continued. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. And I think I finally at that point was, I can breathe. I can buy blankets. I can buy clothes. I mean, this is all going to happen. We're good. So the pregnancy goes on, and it was a few weeks later, and I was in San Francisco for a work thing, and we took a break, and I listened to my voicemails. I think cell phones must have been a thing at that point, which is kind of shocking. So I listened to the voicemails, and the one I'll never forget was, "Hi, Nikki. This is the Genetics Counseling Committee of Denver, Colorado." And I thought, oh my God, a committee, like not just a counselor, an entire committee has just called me. And my heart sank. I felt like I was going to vomit. I felt sick. And I called them back when I had a chance at lunch. I couldn't focus, of course, on anything else. And I called them back. I stood outside on Van Ness Avenue, and I remember it was really busy. It was really loud, but nothing was louder and more silencing, I guess, than the person on the other line who said, "So we got the test results back, and we didn't discover Down syndrome, but we did discover that your baby boy has an unbalanced translocation of chromosomes 2 and 8. And it's extra material, I believe, on the number 2. And I said, "What am I supposed to do with that information? What is that? What do you mean?" And she said, "It's my job, and this is what I do. I call to tell people what to expect and what it is, but we've never seen this. We met with the whole entire committee, and there's no documented case of this. We don't know what it is." And that was not a good day. That was not a good phone call. I was pissed. I was sick. I was sad. And I was really, really angry. I was angry that they called me and didn't know what to tell me. I was angry that no one knew what it was. I was really angry. I had to get on an airplane ride from San Francisco to Denver and selfishly cry and freak out silently for that long until I got home, where I had to tell my daughter's dad, who, the asshat that he is, I knew he couldn't handle it. So I mentioned it to him, of course, and I said, "Hey, here's what they told me." And he said, "If it's a retard, you're not going to have it." And I said, "Well, I'm about, I think I was 4 or 5, again, all the testing had taken a while. So I was about 4, maybe 5 months in to this pregnancy, and I was not going to not have this child." And so fast forward, the Genetics Counseling Committee decided to genetically test the whole entire family. So they tested myself, Bootsy, and the kid's father. And I thought it was a no-brainer. Like I said, I mean, he's off in not a special needs way. He's off, and that I was like, it's got to be him. Like, he's got to be the carrier of this thing. And they called me again. I was at work. I took the call in the back room of work, and they said, "Okay, so Your daughter has the exact same genetic breakdown, and it's the exact same chromosomal imbalance. She's got an unbalanced translocation of chromosomes 2 and 8. Mom is the carrier. You've got a balanced translocation of chromosomes 2 and 8. And I thought, holy shit. Two holy shits. First, relief. Okay, it's what Bootsy has. Bootsy's the best in my eyes. The best, the most amazing baby and child ever. Yes, I'll do it again. Relief that, okay, he's just going to have the same thing. Holy shit, that, I'm sorry, I have it? That's something I passed on to my kids. So I have a guilty conscience for everything. It's part of my genetic makeup. And oh my God, the guilt. I passed this on to my kids. They have this because of me, not asshat. Okay. Shocking, but it is what it is. And I hated being pregnant. It was awful. It was scary. It was so scary. They sent me down to a geneticist. The geneticist offered me a packet of what could potentially be in our cards for a child with an unbalanced translocation, or a chromosome disorder. And I refused to read it. I didn't want to read it. You have to understand, my parents come from a generation where special needs kids were not known as special needs. They were known as mentally retarded. And they, more times than not, were put in institutions. And my generation, we kind of, it was for our parents, if they had them, special needs children, when they were generally institutionalized, they were also not typically talked about. It was very few and far between that they would speak of these people. And then my generation comes along and we're not really exposed to it because, like I said, a lot of our parents' age, that generation had institutionalized special needs people or people with disabilities. So we weren't exposed to a lot of it. I had this odd empathy for people with special needs and borderline obsession where I watched this movie with VHS time. So I'd rewind that sucker. And anybody who knows what a VHS is knows it takes a long time to rewind something. So you know you want to watch something if you're rewinding it and watching it over and over again, because that was a lot of effort. And it was called Just Like Normal People. And I watched it all of the time. And it was about two people with Down syndrome that met. And I have to be honest, I acted it out all the time. Again, I was not your typical child. So the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. But that to say we mocked them. My generation was kind of, that's not to say everybody, but we kind of mocked them. And the word retard was a very acceptable word to use, which is now obviously shocking to me and gross and disgusting. But I grew up using that word. And here I was in the late stages of my pregnancy going to a geneticist and reading different things. Most stuff I avoided reading. I didn't want to read. I had tossed What to Expect When You're Expecting into the garbage. And in my head started expecting what to expect when you're not expecting the typical child, I guess, is exactly what I started doing. And that was something I had to write the book for myself because I knew it wasn't Down syndrome. So I couldn't become a member of that support system or group because that's not what we had. And we were an anomaly. There was nobody else to date documented with their diagnosis. So this was my map to write. This was my map to fill out, my path to do, and I was going to do it on my own. Um, so he arrived. He arrived normal time, not early. He was born in Vale, so immediately kids go on oxygen. The altitude's 8150, so that was not a surprise. But he was on oxygen, and he wasn't big. He wasn't tiny. He was just kind of average side, a little bit on the smaller. Um, but when he was born, he was perfect to me. And we went through various just your typical, medical things at the very, very beginning. And then we started going down to Children's a lot. And he wasn't doing well. And he was failure to thrive. And he also was hearing impaired. He had the laundry list of basically everything I avoided reading about having or potential problems, I guess, with having a child with special needs. He had his optic nerve hypoplasia, which typically people are blind. He is not. He is vision impaired, but he wears glasses and it's corrected by glasses. He's hearing impaired like his sister, Bootsy. Bootsy's also vision impaired. Both have been extremely delayed with speech. He was not expected to live. He is now 14, going on 15, an avid skateboarder. Bootsy is 18, going on 19. And it's been an incredible journey. And again, they have a laundry list of disabilities. They have everything and then some. Sandler has been a lot more medically challenging than Bootsy and has had about 13 surgeries. And he's the kid who wasn't supposed to live, and he did. And when they said, okay, he's probably never going to talk. And I remember our speech therapist he had when he was a little tiny baby said, he's going to talk. And she believed in him and she believed in us. And she said, he's going to talk. And sure as shit, she said this. She said, he's going to talk so much, it's going to drive you crazy. And she wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong at all. So, as Forrest Gump said, life is like a box of chocolates, or as the story taught me in Las Vegas, life is like a black paper bag under the bed in Vegas, and you never do know what you're going to get. But it is all about, I think, how you handle it. And I didn't ask for these things. I wasn't prepared for these challenges in my life, but boy, if it's done one thing, it's given me a purpose, and my purpose is very clear, and it is to share them with the world. If we can, give something to medicine. There's of course been a medical research study launched on the two children, and if we can, offer something up to help people in medicine, even more beyond that, that's great. I love that for that contribution. But beyond that, they are so inspiring, because these are two kids that have been through it, and they have overcome everything, every obstacle in the world that they were told first they would never be able to do. Walk, talk, live, for God's sake. And they've done it. And they continue to inspire the world, and they inspire me every day. Yes, they drive me absolutely nuts. Of course they do. They're children. And it's not always awesome and fun, but you know what? They are meant to be here, and they are meant to change the world. It's been my mantra, it's been my guidance, and today it's the special edition. Welcome to Holland by Emily Pearl Kingsley. I am often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared that unique experience, to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." "Holland, you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. All of my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy." But there's been a change in flight plans. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is they haven't taken you to some horrible, disgusting place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, but after you catch your breath, you look around, and you begin to notice that Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, "Yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned." The pain of that will never ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland.